I never thought a babysitting job could unravel my entire reality. But that night, when the little boy whispered, "They're watching us," I realized nothing about that family was normal. But before I reveal how that one sentence from a child changed my life forever, if you're a good person and like to do good things, subscribe. It's free and it helps more than you think. My name is Emma and I'm 24 years old. I thought I was just there to watch two kids for a few hours, but instead, I stepped into a nightmare that would change everything. From the moment I arrived at the grand old house on Maple Street, something felt off. The parents were polite but distant, their smiles never reaching their eyes. The kids, Jacob and Lily, seemed normal at first, but Jacob's stare was too intense, like he saw through me. When Lily vanished at midnight and Jacob said she'd gone to the other side, I didn't know whether to call the police or run away screaming. I tried to tell myself it was all in my head, exhaustion or nerves. But then the knocks started at the windows, the shadows moving when no one was there. Every night brought new horrors I couldn't explain, and every morning, the parents acted like nothing had happened. I was trapped in a web of secrets, lies, and something far darker than I could ever imagine. The deeper I dug, the more I realized this family's perfect facade hid a curse, a history soaked in pain and silence. And the more I tried to help the children, the closer I got to danger. But what frightened me most was the feeling that I wasn't just babysitting anymore. I was part of the story. And the story was far from over. The chill that swept through the room was not from the cold. It was something far older and more malignant, like the house itself had exhaled a breath of pure hatred. The letters in my hand trembled as I read the first lines. Words penned in desperation, love twisted by fear, a mother's last attempt to protect her children from a darkness that had crept inside their home and her mind. Each letter revealed fragments of a horrifying truth. The mother had tried to perform a ritual, a desperate pact with forces beyond understanding, to trap the evil inside the house forever. But the ritual backfired. Instead of sealing the darkness away, it bound her family's souls to the house, leaving them trapped in eternal torment. I looked at Jacob, whose face was pale but determined. "We need to finish what she started," he said quietly. The weight of those words settled heavy between us. Suddenly, the room plunged into darkness, the candles snuffed out by an unseen force. The house groaned around us, as if awakening from a long slumber, angered by our intrusion. The whispers grew louder, now a cacophony of pain and rage. "We have to find the center of this evil," I whispered, voice barely audible over the rising storm of voices. Before it's too late, we stepped forward, hands clutching each other tightly, into the black heart of the house where nothing was certain except the nightmare that awaited. The moment we crossed the threshold into the house's darkest heart, the air thickened like molasses. Every step we took felt heavier, as if the weight of those trapped souls bore down on us, pressing in from all sides. Shadows danced grotesquely along the cracked walls, flickering in and out like ghostly warnings. Jacob's breath was shallow, his flashlight barely cutting through the oppressive darkness. I could feel the pulse of the house, a terrible heartbeat syncing with our own, dragging us deeper into its maw. Then, from the silence, a voice, faint but unmistakable. "My name," whispered, pleading, desperate. I spun around, eyes straining. Nothing. Just the hollow echo of that voice haunting the air. "We're not alone," Jacob said, voice tight. "They're here, trapped, begging for release." Suddenly, the floor beneath us shifted. The ground trembled as if the house itself was alive, shifting, changing. A hidden door creaked open at our feet, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling down into pitch black. No way back. We had come for answers. But what waited below was a nightmare far worse than anything we had imagined. The source of the darkness, the heart of the madness. And as we descended, I knew there was no turning back. The staircase seemed endless, each step swallowing us deeper into the cold belly of the house. The air grew damp and stale, carrying whispers that scraped against my skin like sharp claws. Jacob's flashlight flickered, casting erratic shadows that danced wildly on the stone walls. At the bottom, A cavernous room opened before us, walls covered with strange symbols, painted in something dark and sticky. The smell of decay was suffocating, mixing with the unmistakable scent of burnt candles and something else, something metallic and sharp. In the center lay an altar, cracked and stained, surrounded by withered flowers and broken relics. My heart hammered against my ribs as I approached it, every instinct screaming for me to run. But the truth was here, trapped in this sacrificial chamber. The mother's last desperate attempt to bind the evil, to keep it contained. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the chamber, vibrating in my chest. Shadows began to swirl, coalescing into a form, twisted, monstrous, and filled with rage. "Run," Jacob hissed, grabbing my arm. But as we turned, the door slammed shut. Trapped. The nightmare was awake, and it wanted us. The door slammed behind us with a finality that crushed every hope of escape. The monstrous shadow loomed, its form shifting and writhing like smoke caught in a storm. Its eyes, hollow and burning, locked onto me, and a cold wave of dread swept through my bones. I stumbled backward, heart racing, desperate to find any weakness, any way out. But Jacob grabbed my hand, steady and fierce. "We end this here," he said, voice low but resolute. Together, we scanned the altar, searching for the remnants of the ritual, the binding spell that could seal this nightmare away. The symbols on the walls pulsed faintly, responding to our presence. I clutched the locket tightly, the last piece of the mother's hope, and began to recite the words we had found in the diary, a fragile thread of light in the suffocating darkness. The creature screamed, a sound of pure agony and rage, as shadows recoiled and twisted, fighting against the binding. Sweat burned my eyes and my voice cracked, but I forced the words out, desperate. Slowly, the darkness shrank, the room brightening as the evil was dragged back into its prison. When silence finally fell, only our ragged breaths filled the air. We were free, or so we hoped. As we climbed the stairs back to the surface, the house seemed to sigh, its anger quelled, but its scars deep and lasting. Some doors, once opened, never truly close. The morning light spilled through the cracked windows, casting long shadows across the battered floorboards. After the nightmare we'd survived, the house seemed almost peaceful, but the silence felt heavy, like a calm before another storm. Jacob and I sat in the kitchen, the weight of what we'd faced pressing down on us in ways words couldn't capture. I traced the edges of the locket in my hand, wondering if the evil was truly gone or just waiting for the perfect moment to return. There was no way to know for sure. The house had already taken so much from us, and yet, somehow, it had left us alive to carry the story forward. Jacob broke the silence, his voice soft but firm. "Some things in this world aren't meant to be disturbed, but we did what we had to do." I nodded, but inside, a quiet fear remained. The darkness might be contained, but it wasn't gone. As we stepped outside, the sun felt colder, the air sharper. The house stood behind us, silent and watchful. We had survived the nightmare, but the scars it left would haunt us forever. The days after that night felt unreal, like waking from a nightmare that refuses to loosen its grip. Jacob and I tried to return to normal, but everything around us seemed tainted. The house, once a place of mystery, had become a shadow over our lives, an unspoken presence we couldn't escape. I found myself waking up in cold sweats, heart racing as if the darkness had followed me home. The locket still hung around my neck, a constant reminder of what we'd faced, and what might still be waiting. Jacob kept insisting we leave the town, that this chapter was closed, but I knew better. Some wounds aren't healed by running away. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I received a call. A voice I didn't recognize, low and urgent, warned me to stay away from the house, that the darkness had a will of its own, and it was far from finished. Fear gripped me, but it wasn't just fear, it was resolve. Whatever that voice meant, whatever threats lurked in the shadows, I knew I had to confront it head-on. Because some stories don't end when the nightmare fades. They just begin again. The call haunted me long after it ended, its warning echoing in the quiet moments when doubt crept in. The darkness we had faced wasn't just a relic trapped beneath a forgotten house. It was a living, breathing force, patient and cunning. It had survived, lurking beneath the surface, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. I could feel it pulling at the edges of my sanity, twisting memories into nightmares. Jacob was right. Leaving might have been easier, but running wouldn't break the cycle. We had to end this, once and for all. So, I returned to the house alone, the place where everything began and where it might all end. The air was thick, not with the stench of decay this time, but with a quiet, dangerous anticipation. The symbols on the walls seemed to shimmer, as if alive, watching me, daring me to challenge the darkness again. I clutched the locket tightly and stepped into the deepest chamber. This time, I wasn't reciting words from a forgotten diary. I was rewriting the story, taking control of the terror that had gripped my life for so long. The shadows surged, voices whispering threats and regrets, but I stood firm. With every heartbeat, the binding grew stronger, the darkness shrinking, forced back into its prison. When the final echoes faded, the house seemed to exhale, a release I could almost feel in my bones. The nightmare was over, truly over. Walking away, I realized the real lesson this story taught me. Sometimes the greatest strength lies not in avoiding fear, but in facing it head-on, no matter how dark the path. And those scars remain, so does the courage to keep moving forward.